Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSPmagazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever. HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hightrustalliance.net.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Marco.
Sean.
Can you hear the sirens?
I am attracted by the sirens. I cannot resist. I'm going to go there.
You're attracted by the sirens.
Yeah, I'm going mythological here.
All right. Well, I'm thinking more of the red flashing light kind with some audible sound too.
Oh, see, that's how our mind works different. You can tell from these things.
Exactly.
No, but I was thinking pirates already.
The pirates, exactly. Yep, that was a totally different path, pirates, and but we're both in the same spot in the sea. Mm-hmm. Now, I was actually, as I mentioned, I was listening to sirens cruising the streets here in New York, which is why it made me say this. But the point I want to make is there are things that alert us to something happening, right? Either something bad is happening or somebody needs to get somewhere where there's something bad happening. And there are signs like that all over the place. Sometimes we don't see them. Sometimes we don't even know they're there. Maybe it's audibly not there or visually not there. And we kind of miss the mark on addressing issues that come our way. And that's clearly something we've seen in the world of supply chain and maritime deliveries and maritime things in general. And I'm excited to have this conversation looking at open source intelligence and looking for the signals from both sides, good side and bad side, and the impact exposing those signals and using those signals can have on society and the businesses that support society.
So you're telling me that we're not paying enough attention?
We're not.
There you go.
We're not.
But there are people that do that.
There are people that do that clearly for good reason, but also for hobby, as I've learned in watching her video, which was the inspiration for this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rae Baker to the show. Rae, thanks for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here.
And I saw a tweet which caught my attention. I saw your video, which inspired me. And I'm excited to have this conversation all around open source intelligence, protecting the maritime world, if you will. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're up to. I know you have a black badge, which is really cool in my mind, probably our listeners as well. What are some things you've been up to and why open source intelligence and specifically in maritime?
So I'm relatively new to cybersecurity / InfoSec in general. Before getting into OSINT and cybersecurity, I was a graphic designer. I did that for about 15 years. Surprisingly, does not pay very well. So after 15 years, I was over it. So I wanted to look for something more technical that also paid well. So I started going back to school for cybersecurity. While I was doing that, I wanted to go all in because I was spending the money to go back to school as an adult, which is terrifying. So I I started writing blogs and I started doing podcasts like this and talking, giving presentations, and I found a full-time job through that, mostly through Twitter and my talks. So I've been working in cyber recon, open source intelligence at a large consulting firm for almost 2 years now. And Maritime, I did as a hobby. I started writing a blog on Maritime because I was trying to think. I use blogs to kind of teach myself how to do things. So I was looking around, like, what have people not really gone into that I can kind of get an angle on and write something that's interesting to me and maybe somebody else. But I didn't really think anyone would care, to be honest. So I wrote a blog on Maritime, and it got a lot of views, and I was really surprised. And then from there, it just I became like the Maritime person somehow. It just like snowballed. And now I mostly do it as a hobby, just looking into things that are happening like present time, some historical stuff. And I find it fun.
Well, it's interesting that
you're on a boat. You're on a boat, virtually on a boat.
And according to Sean, boats are a lot of fun because I know he is passionate about it.
I am a big sailor.
I actually want, got me, your background, which of course we talk about a lot on ITSPmagazine. Even our other hosts, they tell this story, these journeys, unusual, uncommon journeys into cybersecurity, and of course, graphic designer making the jump into that. It's quite different, but I think there is that inquisitive mind that always work. Either, you research for something. Many people that we know, they come from being librarian, and then they find their vocation in a way into cybersecurity. So I would like from you to tell me a little bit more about, and not just me, of course, to our audience, what does entitle to doing OSINT in general, and in particular for the maritime industry?
So I marry a lot of different parts of OSINT. I think people coming into the field of OSINT don't necessarily understand how many different facets of OSINT there are. You have people who watch airplanes, you have people who just hunt for people. You have people like me who do maritime stuff, but it all crosses over at some point. Like, I will do OSINT into a ship, a vessel, but then I also want to know who owns the vessel. So that becomes corporate reconnaissance. Then I want to know who those people are that run those businesses that own the vessel. So I'm looking into specific people. And then maybe ships land on the vessel. So I want, or flights land on the vessel. So I want to watch airplanes. So I get to touch a lot of OSINT just in maritime. And I think it works reverse. If you're looking into airplanes, oftentimes all these things cross too. So I find, that's why I find like travel, railway, airplanes, ships, cars. For some reason, I'm into the transportation side of OSINT, but it also allows me to touch all the other parts that are also interesting.
So can you take us through and we probably don't have time in this podcast to walk through it all, but maybe just to like paint a picture, graphic designer here, paint a picture for us of the maritime ecosystem. What's done in that space? I know I can pick out supply chain and defense as a couple things. So what's done in that space, and what does that ecosystem look like in terms of systems, satellites, and what have you?
Yeah. So there's a few different things that people look into in reference to maritime. You have, like you mentioned, defense. So especially we see now with like Russia and China, just monitoring their movements and our movements, and all the posturing between is just fascinating to me. But there's also things like illegal fishing or smuggling, human trafficking. And all those are also very important, and lots of people look into those. And again, that crosses over into systems like satellite, RF tracking, just the comms on the ships themselves. There's lots of, I mean, it's basically a moving system, a system of systems
Right.
on the ocean. I mean, if someone were to hack into a ship, and I may be jumping the gun here, you might have a question for this later, but if someone were to hack into a ship, there are so many things they could do with that. They could change the speed, they could change the course, they could make it look like the ship is doing something that it's not. Maybe they want to hack into the satellite on the ship and make it look like the ship is in, the Pacific and it's not actually there. Or maybe they want to spin the ship in a circle and adjust the actual direction of the ship, or slow it down, or make it look like it has a lot of supplies on it or none at all. There's so much you could do inside that system that you could crash a ship into another ship if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's unreal.
It sounds like a fun game.
That's right. Spinning
Cyber.
You sunk my battleship.
Exactly. You want to play a game of thermonuclear war.
Bumper cars, bumper ships.
Sean, I want to jump in because I'm connecting. I have a visual in my head. I kind of come from advertising and design myself. So I think visuals. Cool. And I saw your Medium post about all those green dots on the ocean, and you don't think that there is all this happening in an ocean, right? Like, there's so many vessels, as you mentioned. Yes. Now. And we just had not too long ago a conversation about security in space with our friend Joshua Belk, and he was pointing to a website that is called Stuff in Space.
Yes.
And you look at that, and it just blew my mind. I mean, I know how much stuff there is in space, but I didn't think it was that much. So I like maybe to see, like, you mentioned all this happening here, all the things that you can do, and what is the actual effect on the business, on the security? I mean, what is the bad guys' goal when they do these things that you just mentioned?
There's multiple goals. I mean, it really depends. Are the bad guys trying to smuggle goods? If they're trying to smuggle goods, or maybe weapons, nuclear weapons, or just arms, they want to hide their identity. They want to get from one point to another point and have no one know that they did that. So that's not necessarily, I guess, hacking. That's just modifying the satellite system on their ship, so they can change their location, they can change their identity, their basically their VIN number of the ship, the MIMSI number, the IMO number. They can adjust those to make it look like they're someone they're not. You could, maybe you're a nation state actor and you want two ships to collide. I mean, or you want to take out an oil ship maybe, and you'd want to wreck a ship into the side of an oil ship and cause an oil spill. I can think of a number of things like that would be interesting to an adversary.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty scary.
It is, but I think the interesting thing to me is that, and I can't help but think supply chain. I know we'll probably touch on the Suez Canal thing in a minute, which you do a lot in your presentation on. But when we think supply chain, I think many of us forget that supply chain means a collection of entities that all have some exposure to risk, and then are the vector into the rest of the supply chain.
Yeah. So
I think in your presentation, you talk about 30 orgs with 100 people and 200 information exchanges just to do something. And I think it was to see one shipment through from start to finish or something like that. Talk to me about the parts moving in there and where those vectors are in that space.
Yeah. So I think the biggest vector is the fact that most of these connections in the chain use things like just writing things on pieces of paper. Like there's no system for a lot of this stuff. It's outdated. Nobody really thinks. I mean, people are starting to think of supply chain and ships in in general as a vector into these things. But I don't think it's still thought of as important as like, IoT or whatever. But there are so many ways to get in each of these. If you're transmitting a shipment from one place to another, you have people loading it onto into a cargo crate. You have people loading the cargo crate onto the ship. You have people inventorying and sending documents through email and other systems that aren't really secure. You might be able to get a manifest for everything that's in that, cargo container. Then it's on the ship. You have access to where it's going, who it's going to, where it came from, how much it weighs, like an abundance of details about the specific shipment, whether it's, just parts for your iPhone or oil that is going to North Korea. There's so many places that you could get in if you were an attacker. And I think overall, we're trying to like rein that in, but it's such a big problem that I think it's going to take a lot of time to fix those holes.
I love that visual, Rae, that I'm getting in my head, and I'm wondering if you can talk to me about. You said it's on paper, a lot of it, but not everything is on paper. Some of it is sensors and beacons and systems of record that
Yes.
do store the stuff digitally. And I'm wondering what of that information that is exposed outwardly with either no access controls or limited or poor or whatever.
I would think a lot of it is scanned.
And why?
Like RF scanning just
Right.
into the system. I mean, I don't have specific details about how they do that, but based on everything else that I've seen, I would think that a lot of it is not protected as well as it should be.
Yeah, because what I'm envisioning is the bad actors using the information they have available to them, and this is the stuff that you have fun looking for and finding, and they could use it. I think in your Suez Canal example, you talk about ships being diverted and potentially pirates. We can talk about pirates now, Marco. The pirates knowing this and being prepared in waiting, right? As one example.
Yeah. There's not too much. There still is piracy. There still are pirates. I think it's a very specific part of the world, and they're looking for very specific cargo. But yeah, I mean, you could divert ships. You could cause all kinds of issues with the cargo itself. I think I'm just thinking about like
looking for the ships with the
terrifying to me.
1976 Toyota Corollas on it.
I feel very responsible right now because I'm kind of forcing you to talk about pirates. No, let's not talk about pirates. That's just the fun.
There is a piracy map if you want to see all of the spots where
really can you
pirates
share
have
that
attacked.
with me, please?
Yeah, I think it's called anti-piracy map.
Okay.
If you Google it, yeah.
All right.
Is that built through OSINT as well?
What's that?
Is that built through OSINT?
I think it's actual like reports, like law reports, like people have filed. Like, because it has details of like, somebody came on the ship with a gun or, whatever. It has those details with the actual event that happened.
You mean with a sword? Because that's the pirate I'm thinking about.
These are modern pirates.
They're funny looking.
No, I think I'm like time traveling right now. So let's get away from this. Tell me a little bit about the connection that there is between, of course, the OSINT that you do specifically, and then how you can actually use this information to go outside maybe from the security environment and apply the research that you guys do into, maybe make a better supply chain, resolve some issue that are arising, especially now that the supply chain is on everybody's mind in the news about, the pandemic and other things that's been happening in the world on how now people realize it's not just about ordering something online and it's magically appears on their doorstep. So how is this functional for business and society in general?
I think one key that a lot of people probably don't consider is, when you're looking at how your stuff is set up, your organization, you think, oh, this one thing, this is fine. We're leaking a little data, but it's not really bad. But I don't use just one thing. I see your ship on the map going somewhere. I get a few details. Then I go somewhere else. I find the people on the ship, running the ship, go somewhere else. I get all your company details. All those things put together make a good picture of what the ship is doing, who owns it, all of that. And that can be used. So I think maybe organizations need to think a bit more about the details that are being released on their ships or on the people going on the ships. Maybe don't take pictures of, the secret missions that you're doing. don't take a picture or a video and put it up online on YouTube. But like we combine in OSINT, we rarely just use one source. It's the combination of details put together that we use. And you can come up with a lot of information that way.
And information sharing between all of the things, right? It's like kind of like getting all the data and putting it together, using GPS. We talked about space before and aerospace and ocean. You get the big picture really of what's going on in this much larger ecosystem than just the silos to say, no, I'm just going to check what happening to boats or train or automobile.
Right. And if you're looking into something like on Maritime Twitter, there's a lot of people who follow, oil vessels, maybe going to sanctioned countries, doing things they're not supposed to do. And they go like way out of the way, trying to like cover up the names on the side of the boats. They'll like put tarps over them or like paint over part of their number so that you can't see it. But they might shut off their satellite so we can't see it when we're tracking it. But, if we have access to visual satellite that we can see it meeting with another ship and transferring oil, we can get around them trying to hide their identity. Or maybe we use RF capability and see who they're communicating with, or their communications on social media. Maybe they're actually saying what they're doing, which is often the case.
So there is this environmental activism as well that is part of the picture.
Yes,
I didn't even think about it, but it makes completely sense.
Yeah, and that happens a lot with with the sanctioned vessels and with illegal fishing and dumping and oil spills, things like that.
Yep. See, Sean, it's not just about pirates.
It's not just about pirates. Now, so I'm going to go back to the Suez Canal to talk about. I want to look at the impact of this stuff, and there are two things that you mentioned in your talk that caught my attention. Many things, but these two
Nicolas
in
Cage.
particular. Exactly. It's always the answer. No, but the first is liability of goods on a ship, and many ships in this case, in the Suez Canal case, where there's huge loss. So that I think it's the ELI 5 law or something.
Oh no, that was just explained like I'm 5. That was just cool Reddit speak for the kids.
For the kids, and then so I guess the general idea is that they all share the responsibility.
Yes.
Whoever's part of that.
Anybody who has cargo on the ship.
Right.
So if it's a Target, if Target has a cargo container on a ship and Walmart has a cargo container on a ship, they all split the cost of the loss.
Right. And then the other thing which was more interesting to me was the alternate routes the alternate route that is being groomed as we speak, if I understand correctly.
The Northern Sea Route.
Yes. And what implications does that have on, global society?
So there's two routes. There's one going down around like Argentina, and that I think added like 10 days onto the journey. But then there's the other one that goes up around Russia in the Northern Sea Route. They want to control that whole area. So they are currently building up ports and all kinds of stuff in there. They have nuclear icebreakers that are traveling through there. There have been some ships going through there. The implications are very environmental, as far as I know at this point. There's a lot of concerns about the vessels traveling through that area because of the fuel that they use, causing a lot of environmental problems in through there. But also, having Russia control a whole main shipping route is probably, not great for us.
Yeah, and I don't want to start any conspiracy theories, but one would imagine that causing repeated delays and loss in the traditional route might promote that other route from being...
they definitely jumped on it when there was the backup in the Suez Canal. They immediately said, well, the Northern Sea Route will be open soon. It will be perfect. Come join us.
Yeah, coincidentally, we got something for you.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do think it's a very dangerous area to go through because of the thick ice.
Yeah, that doesn't sound... I'm actually looking at snow coming down now, so that sounds pretty worrisome. Let's talk about collaboration, like global collaboration or regulation, because you always think about and we had this conversation again, not to go back in my passion, which is outside of cybersecurity, which is a space, but the ownership of the satellite, the ownership of the space, you can't really own that. And there was a specific reference to the ocean, right? Like once you're in an open ocean, there is no boundaries. So the responsibility, it becomes an issue, which we know in cybersecurity often is, the attribution itself. What's going on in terms of legal collaboration agreement between different, European community and the United States and so forth to kind of make the ocean a little bit more secure, and of course the role of OSINT in all of this?
Yeah, there are a few agreements. I don't know them offhand.
That's okay.
But there are a few agreements, especially around like Taiwan and China and that area where lots of things happen, especially with ships. There's a lot of group governing of the sea, but like you said, once you get out so far, I forget the distance from shore, but it's deep ocean. It's kind of a free for all. A lot of times the ships will meet out there and do the things they're not supposed to be doing, transfer oil or transfer goods or whatever. They go out there specifically into a region where it's not very well governed, I guess, and they do what they're trying to accomplish, and then they go back. I don't know the solution to that. I know that there are things in place, and they're trying to. There's some new law with IMO numbers and just governing the actual identity of ships, because you don't even need to have satellite on your ship, your vessel, until you're a certain weight. So fishing vessels may not even have satellite on them for you to track them.
Right. Because it kind of make me think about that when you mentioned that if two large companies, or maybe even more, they're sharing a container, they're sharing an entire ship, they share the loss. So I'm kind of like, it sounds like a Wild West.
I don't think a lot of people realize like how crazy the middle of the ocean is.
Yeah. So
and it's hard as OSINT investigators, because there's, with flight tracking, you have trackers that are free that people can use, and they can track things for free and do, humanitarian type watching, for things, illegal things. There's no free maritime tracker. There's nothing anybody can use without paying for it, which kind of hinders a lot of OSINT research because you have to pay for it to use it.
Right.
So talking about availability to data, I'm gonna actually head into port for a moment, and let's look at this from a general business perspective. I don't know if we can change the maritime scenario and make it into an analogy that other businesses can use. What's the equivalent of the sea and the shipping lanes and the vessels and the goods for a regular business? What can they learn from the maritime world with respect to OSINT, how it's used for and against them in the world of business?
I think they can take the lessons that we've learned with the Ever Given getting stuck and some other supply chain issues we've had, and is the homeland security type issues, and just look ahead, because we knew that was possible in the Suez Canal. We knew it was a choke point. There are several choke points around the world, and we know that could happen. If something shut down there, it could cause a huge problem, but nobody thought of any, remedies or like planned for that. And I think that's a big lesson is, you have to kind of plan for a lot of these things. They probably will happen, especially with, if you're looking at supply chain, if you're a company that ships things, which most do, that's supply chain is a very important part of your organization, and you need to plan for these types of things to potentially happen, and they could shut you down or cost you millions, if not billions of dollars.
Yeah, it kind of make you think, and I think we're going to go into my favorite part of every conversation, which is looking at the future. And it's kind of interesting.
It's not me, because I'll take us to food.
Which is definitely relevant when you talk about the supply chain. So my point is, I was making the joke of the pirates, of course, going back in time, and I mean, the maritime, it's been the first one that has been connecting different culture, different countries, and allowed like a global market. And then we're still relying on it. And I think many people don't really understand that. Again, like I said before, stuff happened magically. Maybe people think everything is flying right now, but it seems to me that the future is still going to be on boats, big boats, and there is going to be always the fact that the ocean is a really big space, and it belongs to really no one to control. So how do you see the future of security on the ocean and transportations and in the whole supply chain developing?
I think it's going to get harder because there are going to be more unmanned ships.
Okay, let's go there.
Yeah, there are a few that are out there on the ocean now, but I think that will increase because they're going to bring costs down, which opens up the vectors for hacking into a ship by a lot, especially when there's not someone on there to immediately remedy whatever has happened. I'm sure they can do something virtually, but that's beyond me. I don't know how to do that. But I foresee that being an issue. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, all the problem we have with making legal and more available autonomous car, which is, the streets and the fact that they were not designed for it. It sounds to me the ocean may be an easier way to utilize unmanned vessels. So, but then of course that's gonna get it fun.
And it's not just autonomous ships or vessels, it's autonomous ports. I mean, a lot of the like berthing of vessels is done autonomously. They come in and they park themselves, I guess, with the stuff that is in the port. And then, out in the ocean, you have the oil rigs too. The platforms, I'm sure those are becoming increasingly more autonomous. So when you have all of these systems just sitting out there, who knows?
Sounds like a James Bond movie.
It does.
Right. I mean, we touched on, you do quite a bit more in your talk, but we briefly touched on ports here, and that's a big part of this as well. And I'm wondering, and you mentioned the oil rigs, which are stationary and soon to be unmanned. I'm wondering, are there other things, maybe not on top of the water, other things below water, or other stationary things that most people don't even think about that are part of this ecosystem?
Yes.
Like weather stations, something. I don't know. What
yeah, like a big one I can think of right off the top of my head is undersea cables. There are maps of undersea cables, and this, if you live on an island or an army base is on an island, and there's only 3 undersea cables that supply all of the communications to an island. And there are ships that are known for scanning over top of these cables from other countries to see where they're at and what's going on. That that would be a concern of mine, national security wise. They also scan for things underground, just like the layout of the land under the sea, because they have these unmanned drone. I guess they're drones, or like undersea drones that they send out for reconnaissance and things. There's so much that you wouldn't believe. And there's maps of the platforms too. Like if you're looking for oil platforms, there's maps for that, and all of the pipes that go to them, who owns the pipes. There's just a lot of information out there.
Valves on the pipes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can look up exactly who owns it, where it runs, where it comes from, where it goes to, who it supplies.
Wow.
I mean,
and you think that there's just nothing out there.
That's right.
Right? Yeah, nothing.
It's just me and my little sailboat.
Exactly. Like just me and my little tin can floating in space. And then there is a ton more. Well, I feel like this is a very fascinating conversation, and I am definitely not the most knowledgeable person about this topic, but you really got me thinking about the complexity of all of this. And I would love to have even more in-depth conversation as you have new presentations and new talk, and it's fascinating. Sean,
yeah,
you got me thinking.
That's all I want, is to make people as excited about ships as I am.
I love it. And you can tell the passion.
Yeah, you inspired me with the post, and you excited me with the conversation. And for those listening, we've mentioned a few things. There's a video of Rae's talk and a Medium post, and I'm sure there are other things that Rae would be happy to share with us in the show notes as well. So stay tuned for that, and connect with Rae and get out to sea and dig into some OSINT, everybody.
Yeah, I was invited to talk at DEF CON this coming year at Hack the Seas, so I should have something there. I haven't decided. I was thinking something about the Northern Sea route. We'll see.
Love that.
Very cool, and we sure hope to see you there.
That would be ideal.
Things hopefully will go back to normal.
To be in person again in Las Vegas for DEF CON.
Yeah, definitely miss DEF CON.
All the coverage of the villages.
Yeah, I've never been.
You've never been? Awesome. Yeah, you're gonna love it. So hopefully we'll see you there. We'll learn even more about hacking the sea.
It would be fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hitrustalliance.net. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share ITSPmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.